Well, let's go to Washington and speak to Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at the foreign policy think tank Defense Priorities. Thank you for making time to talk to us. Just how difficult is an operation like this? How hard is it to get civilians out of areas like this industrial complex?
You know, a little while ago, maybe some number of weeks, it would have been much more difficult, especially if the entire city had been under attack, as it had been since really the beginning of the war. But now then that the whole fight for Mariupol is now just on the Azovstal complex, it's not hard at all for Russia to stop any of their bombardments of it and then clear a cordon and a path in and out so that they can get them out. So once the decision has been made that both sides are agreeing that civilians are coming out, it's actually at this point not that difficult to get them out. And at least according to the New York Times just a couple of hours ago, there is a plan that more civilians will come out tomorrow. So in all probability, this was like a proof of concept to make sure that they could go. And that's probably why they had a relatively small number that gone out. And if that continues to work as it appears it did, then God willing, more will come out tomorrow until all of them come out.
And that's important, isn't it? Because there are hundreds of people still trapped.
Right. Yeah. And that's from the quote you just had there from the battalion commander. It sounds like they have the same intent, that they want to get all the people out. Then there's going to be the second issue of the Azov Battalion fighters themselves will be a second issue. And that will probably take some more complex negotiations before they are willing to surrender. But the problem is, and the reality is, that the place has been cut off since the 7th of March. And if they're not already out of food and water, they certainly soon will be. And they're going to have to make a choice for the fighters. Do they just die there and just not surrender, or do they take the risk and give up? Because they're just not going to be able to hold out much longer.
And what is Russia's strategy for this complex?
Yeah, what they have tried to do, it certainly makes sense from a military perspective. They didn't want to lose too many people in taking the city, but it was absolutely vital for them to do so for a number of strategic and tactical reasons. So they had a cordon around it, and they surrounded the city on the 7th of March, and then they slowly squeezed it down. And you saw that they used lots of artillery, lots of rocket power, and just slowly, methodically, just destroyed all the Ukrainian defenders in the zone until they were finally, scored it into that Azovstal. And now then they are ready to clear off that final piece there. And instead of sending troops back in, that would only cost more destruction, Russia has decided to just basically starve them out.
And you've talked about the Azov Battalion, the fighters who are in there, and why they might find it difficult to make the choice to leave. But just talk to us a little bit more about who they are, because they are controversial.
Yes, they are. They've been involved in a lot of the most emotional and contentious relations between Russia and Ukraine, really going all the way back to 2014. As the Azov Battalion is a rightist militia that Ukraine claims is a neo-Nazi kind of group, and actually some of their own symbolism actually takes from the 2nd SS Panzer Division. So there, at least is some surface level understanding of that. But they have taken some actions against Russian citizens in the past that Russia claims were war crimes prior to the 24th of February. And there's a lot of bad blood between them, and it's probably one of the reasons why the Azov Battalion has not surrendered up to this point, whereas 1,400 of the regular Ukrainian troops did surrender in the previous 3 weeks when their supplies ran out, and apparently they're being treated like normal prisoners of war. They're not being mistreated, apparently, but that's not completely clear that Russia would do the same with the Azov. So I understand their hesitancy.
Does that make it somewhat more precarious for the civilians who are trapped in between these two factions that, as you say, just do not trust each other and have quite a lot of bad blood between them?
Well, I don't think so. It doesn't need to. Russia has been very outspoken. Their military several times over the last 3 weeks that they have said, hey, we're going to pause operations so that the civilians can come out. We will have a cordon and a path for them to escape. But for whatever reasons, we won't know until later on. the Ukrainian forces did not allow the civilians to come out. I don't know if they feared for their lives or they didn't trust Russia. I don't know what it was. We'll have to wait and see how that. But Russia actually desires for the civilians to come out and to, whether they go to Zaporizhia or wherever they go to, they'll be out of the line of fire and they'll be able to have food and water. So I hope that saner heads prevail on both sides.
All right. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.